Before we begin, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications because the truth in this story will completely change the way you see a father and his daughter. My name is Daniel Carter. For 17 years, my daughter Emily believed I was the reason her childhood was destroyed. And for 17 years, I allowed her to believe it. Not because I didn't love her. The truth was, I loved her more than anything in the world. But sometimes, a father has to become the villain in his child's story to protect her from a truth that could hurt even more. Emily was only 8 years old when I left our house. I still remember that night. She stood at the top of the stairs, holding her little pink teddy bear. Tears were running down her cheeks. "Dad, where are you going?" I wanted to run back to her. I wanted to pick her up, kiss her forehead, and tell her everything would be okay. But instead, I looked into her eyes and said the words that would haunt me for the rest of my life. "I'm sorry, Emily." Then I walked out. Her mother, Sarah, never forgave me. Neither did Emily. As the years passed, Emily heard only one version of the story. Her father abandoned them. Her father chose another life. Her father didn't care enough to stay. Every birthday, every Christmas, and every school event reminded me of everything I had lost. I watched my daughter grow up from a distance. I secretly paid for her school. I sent gifts without my name. When she graduated from high school, I stood across the street and watched her receive her diploma. She looked beautiful. And when everyone around her applauded, I applauded too, quietly, from behind the crowd. She never knew I was there. Years later, Emily became a successful young woman. But she still hated me. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. It was Emily. I hadn't heard her voice in years. "Dad," she said coldly, "I don't want you contacting me again." My heart broke. "Emily, please." "No. You had your chance." Then the call ended. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at an old photograph of her. She was 8 years old, the same little girl who had stood on the stairs and asked me where I was going. I held the photograph close and whispered, "One day, sweetheart, you'll understand." But I never expected that day to come. 3 months later, I died. Emily didn't attend my funeral. She didn't know the truth. She didn't know why I had left. She didn't know about the nights I spent sitting outside her school. And she certainly didn't know about the old wooden box hidden inside my closet. 1 week after my funeral, Emily received a phone call from my lawyer. "There's something your father left for you," he said. "What is it?" "A letter." At first, Emily didn't want to take it. But something inside her made her say yes. The next morning, she opened the old wooden box. Inside was a photograph of her as a child, a hospital bracelet, and one handwritten letter. At the top were 6 words. "Emily, you deserve to know the truth." Her hands began to shake. She opened the letter. The first sentence made her stop breathing. "I never abandoned you, Emily. I left because someone was trying to hurt you." Emily stared at the words again. Then she read the next line. And suddenly, she realized something terrifying. The childhood she thought she remembered might not have been the childhood she had actually lived. Emily sat completely still at the kitchen table, holding her father's letter with both hands. For several minutes, she couldn't move. She read the first sentence again. "I never abandoned you, Emily. I left because someone was trying to hurt you." Her heart began beating faster. "What does that mean?" she whispered. She looked toward the old wooden box. There had to be more. She searched through it again and found a small envelope hidden underneath the hospital bracelet. On the front, her father had written, "Do not open this unless you are ready to know everything." Emily hesitated. For 17 years, she had believed her father was a selfish man who had walked away from his family. Her mother had told her that story countless times. Whenever Emily asked why her father left, Sarah always gave the same answer. "He stopped loving us." Emily had believed it. But now, for the first time, she wondered if her mother had been telling the truth. She slowly opened the envelope. Inside was another photograph. It showed Emily standing outside a hospital. She looked about 8 years old. Beside her stood her father. But there was something strange. In the background was a black SUV. Emily stared at the vehicle. She had no memory of that day. Then she noticed a date written on the back of the photograph. October 14th, 2009. Emily suddenly remembered something. That was the day her father supposedly abandoned her. She had always believed he simply left after an argument with her mother. But the photograph suggested something completely different. Her hands trembled as she continued reading. My little girl, if you are reading this, then I am probably no longer here to explain what happened. I know you hated me. I know you believed I walked away because I didn't care. I wanted to tell you the truth so many times, but I couldn't. Someone was watching our family. Someone who wanted something from us. And when I discovered what they were planning, I realized that staying close to you could put your life in danger. Emily stopped reading. Her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Who?" The letter continued. Your mother never knew the whole story. I made sure she didn't. I needed her to believe I had left because I was angry. I needed everyone to believe I was the bad guy. Emily covered her mouth. All those years. Her father had allowed her to hate him on purpose. But why? She kept reading. The night I left, I received a phone call from a man I had never met before. He knew your school. He knew your teacher. He knew where you slept. Emily froze. The room suddenly felt cold. She looked toward the windows. For the first time, she wondered whether someone had really been watching her family. Then she read the next paragraph. I reported everything to the police, but I couldn't trust everyone around us. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I disappeared. Emily's tears began falling. But disappearing didn't mean forgetting you. Her father had written about every birthday he secretly watched from a distance. He wrote about the first time she rode a bicycle, her first school play, her graduation. He remembered everything. Then Emily reached the final page. Only one sentence was written there. If you want to know who is behind it all, ask your mother about the night of October 14th, 2009. Emily dropped the letter onto the table. Her mother. Sarah knew something. Maybe she had always known. Emily immediately picked up her phone. Her finger hovered over her mother's name. For years, she had avoided that question. But now she had no choice. She pressed call. After 3 rings, Sarah answered. Emily? Mom, Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady. I found Dad's letter. There was complete silence on the other end. Emily's heart began pounding. Then she heard something she had never heard from her mother before. A shaky breath. And finally, Sarah whispered, Where did you find that? Emily closed her eyes. You knew, didn't you? Her mother didn't answer. Mom, what happened on October 14th, 2009? Another long silence followed. Then Sarah said, You need to come home. Why? Because there are things about your father that I never told you. Emily stood up. What things? Her mother's voice became almost a whisper. Your father didn't leave us that night. Sarah paused. He was taken. Emily's face went pale. What? He was taken, her mother repeated. And I was the reason. The call suddenly ended. Emily stood frozen in the middle of the room. Her father had not abandoned her. He had disappeared. And her mother had known why. But before Emily could process what she had just heard, someone knocked 3 times on her front door. She slowly turned toward it. No one knew she had found the letter. At least, that's what she thought. The knocking came again. 3 slow knocks. Emily walked toward the door. She looked through the window. And standing outside was a man she had never seen before. But the moment she saw the black SUV parked behind him, she knew exactly who he was. Emily stood frozen behind the front door. The man outside hadn't moved. He was tall, probably in his late 50s, wearing a dark coat. His face was unfamiliar, but there was something about him that made Emily's stomach tighten. Behind him sat a black SUV, the same kind of vehicle she had seen in her father's photograph. Emily stepped away from the window. She didn't open the door. Instead, she quietly grabbed her phone and called her mother again. No answer. She tried a second time. Still nothing. The man knocked again. 3 slow knocks. Emily Carter? She didn't respond. I know you're inside. Her heart raced. "How does he know my name?" she whispered. The man continued. "I'm not here to hurt you." Emily looked at the letter on the kitchen table. Something told her she shouldn't trust him. She moved silently toward the back door. But before she could reach it, her phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. "Stop reading your father's letter." Emily stared at the screen. A second message appeared. "You don't know what he did." She looked toward the front door again. The man was still standing there. Then another message arrived. "If you want to live, come alone." Emily's hands began shaking. She immediately called 911. But before she could say anything, the lights in her house suddenly went out. The entire room went dark. Emily froze. Outside, she heard the sound of a car engine. Then silence. She waited several seconds before turning on her phone flashlight. The man was gone. So was the black SUV. Emily locked every door and moved upstairs. She knew she couldn't stay there. Her father's letter had changed everything. The man at the door knew about the letter. Someone had been watching her. And her mother knew more than she had admitted. Emily packed a small bag and drove straight to her mother's house. When she arrived, the front door was already open. "Mom?" No answer. Emily stepped inside. The house was completely dark. A glass was broken on the kitchen floor. A chair had been knocked over. And on the dining table was a photograph. Emily picked it up. It was an old family photograph. Her father, her mother, and 8-year-old Emily, but someone had scratched her father's face out. On the back of the photograph were 4 words. He wasn't the enemy. Emily's breathing stopped. Then she heard footsteps upstairs. "Mom?" She slowly walked toward the staircase. The footsteps stopped. Emily climbed 1 step at a time. When she reached the hallway, she saw her mother sitting on the floor of the bedroom. Her face was covered in tears. "Mom, what happened?" Sarah looked up. "You found the letter." Emily nodded. "Tell me the truth." Sarah looked toward the bedroom window. Then she whispered, "Your father was protecting you." "From who?" Sarah's eyes filled with fear. "From your grandfather." Emily stared at her. "My grandfather died before I was born." Sarah shook her head. "No, Emily." She reached into a drawer and pulled out an old newspaper. She placed it in Emily's hands. The headline made Emily's blood run cold. Local businessman declared dead after mysterious disappearance. Under the headline was a photograph. Emily looked at the face. It was the same man she had seen standing outside her house. Her grandfather was alive. And he had just found her. Emily stared at the newspaper. Her hands were trembling. The photograph on the front page showed the same man who had been standing outside her house only hours earlier. Her grandfather. A man she had believed was dead her entire life. "No," Emily whispered. "This can't be true." Sarah looked at her daughter with tears in her eyes. "I wanted to tell you." "Then why didn't you?" "Because your father made me promise." Emily dropped the newspaper onto the table. "My father knew he was alive?" Sarah nodded. "He knew everything." Emily's anger returned. "So all these years, everyone lied to me?" Sarah lowered her head. "Your father lied to protect you." "I lied because I was terrified." "Terrified of what?" Sarah looked toward the locked bedroom door. "Your grandfather wasn't the man people thought he was." She explained that Emily's grandfather, Richard Carter, had been a powerful businessman. To the outside world, he was generous, successful, and respected. But inside the family, he was controlling. When Emily's father, Daniel, discovered that Richard was involved in illegal financial dealings, he confronted him. Richard threatened him. He told Daniel that if he went to the police, Emily would disappear. Daniel didn't believe him at first. Until one night, Emily vanished from her bedroom. She was found 2 hours later near an abandoned warehouse. That was when Daniel realized the threat was real. "He knew where you were," Sarah said. Emily's face turned pale. "My father found me?" "Yes." "Then why did he leave?" Sarah began crying. "Because Richard gave him a choice." Emily waited. "Leave the family and disappear forever, or watch Emily disappear for real." Emily sat down. Suddenly, the memories of her childhood began changing. Her father's cold goodbye, the mysterious gifts, the distant figure watching her graduation. It all made sense. But there was one question she couldn't understand. If my grandfather wanted to hurt me, why is he here now? Sarah looked at her. Because he wants something. What? I don't know. Before Sarah could say anything else, the lights flickered. Then they went out. Emily immediately stood. Mom? Sarah grabbed her hand. Don't move. A sound came from downstairs. Someone had entered the house. Emily heard footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming closer. Sarah whispered. He found us. The bedroom door suddenly shook. Emily stepped backward. Then a voice came from the hallway. Sarah. Emily recognized it immediately. It was the man from outside her house. Her grandfather. Richard. Open the door. Sarah said nothing. Richard spoke again. I'm not here to hurt Emily. Emily looked at her mother. Then what does he want? Sarah's face became pale. He wants the letter. Emily held the letter tightly. Richard suddenly shouted. Daniel left you something that belongs to me. Emily stepped toward the door. What? Silence. Then Richard answered. The proof. Emily looked at her mother. What proof? Sarah closed her eyes. The proof that your father died trying to expose him. Emily's heart stopped. Her father hadn't simply died. He had been fighting Richard until the very end. Then something crashed downstairs. Richard was gone. Emily ran to the window. Outside, the black SUV was speeding away. But before it disappeared around the corner, Emily noticed something in the passenger seat. A small red suitcase. The same suitcase she remembered from the night her father left. And suddenly, she remembered something else. She had seen that suitcase before. Inside her father's old wooden box. Emily turned toward the table. The hospital bracelet was still there. She picked it up. On the back were 3 numbers. 714. Her mother saw them and immediately covered her mouth. Emily, what does 714 mean? Sarah stared at her daughter. That's not a number. She swallowed hard. It's a room. Emily's eyes widened. Room 714? Sarah nodded. The room where your father disappeared. Emily stared at the hospital bracelet in her hand. Room 714, she repeated. Her mother nodded slowly. That's where everything changed. Emily felt a chill run through her body. What happened there? Sarah looked away. Your father went there the night he disappeared. But why? To meet someone. Who? Sarah hesitated. An investigator. Emily looked confused. Your father had discovered that Richard was hiding money through several companies. He had evidence, but he needed someone he could trust. Did the investigator help him? Sarah shook her head. He never got the chance. Emily looked down at the bracelet. Then what happened to Dad? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. That night, Daniel called me from the hospital. What did he say? He told me to take you and leave immediately. Why? Because Richard had found out about the evidence. Emily's breathing became heavier. What happened next? Sarah wiped her tears. Daniel told me he would meet us later. But he never came. No. Did you wait for him? For hours. And then, Sarah looked directly into Emily's eyes. Richard called. Emily froze. What did he say? He told me Daniel was gone. Gone where? I asked him the same question. Sarah's voice began shaking. He said, if you want your daughter to stay alive, forget Daniel ever existed. Emily stepped backward. So you believed him? I was terrified. And you let me hate Dad? Sarah began crying. I thought I was protecting you. Emily looked away. For 17 years, she had blamed her father. But the person who had helped create that lie was standing in front of her. Her own mother. Suddenly, Emily noticed something written on the hospital bracelet. There was another marking underneath the number 714. A tiny letter. B. Mom, what does the B mean? Sarah stared at it. Her face changed instantly. I don't know. You're lying. No, Emily. You know exactly what it means. Sarah remained silent. Then Emily heard a sound. A car door slamming outside. Both women turned toward the window. A black SUV was parked across the street. The same vehicle. Emily grabbed her phone. Is that Richard? Sarah shook her head. No. Then who? I don't know. A man stepped out of the SUV. He looked around before walking toward the house. Emily suddenly noticed something familiar about him. He was carrying a small black folder. Her father had owned one exactly like it. The man knocked. Sarah whispered, "Don't answer." But Emily walked toward the door. She opened it slightly. The man looked at her. "Emily Carter?" "Yes. My name is Michael Reed." He reached inside his coat and pulled out an old photograph. Emily stared at it. It showed her father standing outside a hospital. Next to him was a younger version of this same man standing at their door. "Michael, you knew my father?" "I was the investigator he contacted." Emily's heart raced. "You know what happened to him?" Michael looked at Sarah. "I know what happened that night." Sarah stepped forward. "You can't tell her." Michael shook his head. "She deserves to know." Emily looked between them. "Tell me." Michael lowered his voice. "Your father didn't disappear from room 714. Emily frowned. "Then where did he go?" Michael looked toward the street. "Someone took him." "Who?" Michael opened the black folder. Inside was a document. At the bottom was Daniel's signature. But there was something else. A second signature. Emily recognized the name immediately. Sarah Carter. Emily looked at her mother in disbelief. "Mom." Sarah's face went white. Michael quietly said, "Your mother signed the document that sent your father away." Emily felt the room spinning. Her mother had spent 17 years telling her that Daniel abandoned them. But now she was beginning to realize the truth was much darker. Sarah had not simply hidden the truth. She had signed something. Something that might have changed Daniel's entire fate. Emily stared at the document in Michael's hand. Her mother's signature was unmistakable. "Mom, what did you sign?" Sarah couldn't answer. Emily stepped closer. "You told me Dad abandoned us. You told me he chose to leave. But your signature is on this document." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I was trying to save you." "Save me from what?" "From your grandfather." Michael placed the document on the table. "Your father discovered that Richard had been using your family's business to move illegal money. Daniel wanted to expose him." Emily looked at the papers. "So Richard threatened Dad?" "Yes," Michael said. "But there was something else." "What?" "Richard had people everywhere. He knew Daniel was collecting evidence. He also knew that Daniel's greatest weakness was you." Emily's voice became quiet. "What happened to my father?" Michael looked at Sarah. "She knows." Emily turned toward her mother. "Mom?" Sarah finally broke down. "The night Daniel disappeared, Richard gave me an ultimatum." "What ultimatum?" "He said that if I wanted you to live a normal life, I had to sign an agreement." Emily stared at her. "What agreement?" "That Daniel would disappear from our lives." Emily's eyes widened. "You agreed." "I thought it was temporary." Sarah wiped her tears. "I thought Daniel would come back once everything was safe. But Richard told me that if I ever contacted him again, you would be taken away from me." Emily's anger began turning into sadness. "Where did they take Dad?" Sarah shook her head. "I don't know." Michael interrupted. "I do." Emily turned toward him. Michael opened the folder again. There was a private facility outside the city. Richard used it to hide people who knew too much. Emily's heart stopped. "My father was there?" "For a while." "How long?" "Almost 2 years." Emily covered her mouth. "He was alive?" "Yes." "Then why didn't he come home?" Michael looked down. "Because he escaped." Emily's eyes widened. "He escaped?" "Your father managed to get out. He contacted me and gave me the evidence. He told me he wanted to come back to you." Emily's voice trembled. "But he didn't." "No." "Why?" Michael looked at Sarah. "Because someone found him before he could reach you." Sarah whispered, "Richard." Emily closed her eyes. All those years, she had believed her father simply walked away. But he had fought to come home. He had been imprisoned. He had escaped. And he had tried to find her. Then Emily noticed something strange in the document. There was a date written at the bottom. March 17th, 2011. She looked at Michael. My father disappeared in 2009. Why was this agreement signed 2 years later? Michael became silent. Emily looked at her mother. Mom? Sarah's face turned pale. I didn't sign it in 2009. Then when? Sarah whispered. 2 years later. Emily felt a cold wave pass through her. Why? Sarah looked toward the window. Because that was the day your father came back. Emily froze. My father came back? Yes. Where? Sarah began crying. He came to our house. Emily's voice shook. What happened? Sarah looked at her daughter and whispered the words she had been afraid to say for 17 years. I opened the door. And Daniel was standing there. Emily's heart pounded. What did he say? Sarah closed her eyes. He asked to see you. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Did you let him? Sarah shook her head. No. Why? Because Richard was standing behind him. Emily suddenly understood. Her father had come home. He had been only a few feet away, and she had never known. But there was one final question. If Richard was there. Emily looked at Michael. Then how did my father die? Michael's expression changed. He didn't. Emily froze. Michael slowly pulled another photograph from the folder. This picture was taken 3 months ago. Emily looked at it. Her hands began to shake. Standing in the photograph was an older man. Gray hair. Tired eyes. A familiar face. Her father. Daniel Carter was alive. Emily couldn't breathe. She stared at the photograph in Michael's hand. The man in the picture was older. His hair was gray. His face was thinner. But there was no mistake. It was her father. Daniel Carter. The man she had spent 17 years hating was alive. Where is he? Emily whispered. Michael looked at her carefully. He's safe. Where? I can't tell you yet. Emily's voice became louder. You don't understand. That's my father. I understand, Michael said. But if you rushed to him, you could put him in danger. Emily looked at her mother. Sarah was crying silently. You knew he was alive? Sarah shook her head. I knew he survived. I didn't know where he was. Emily stepped closer. You should have told me. I wanted to. When? Sarah had no answer. Emily turned toward Michael. Why did my father stay away from me? Michael placed the photograph on the table. Because he believed Richard was still watching you. But Richard is old. Age doesn't make someone less dangerous. Michael opened the folder again. Inside were several photographs. Emily saw Richard meeting different people. Police officers. Businessmen. Private security guards. And one photograph made her blood run cold. It showed Richard standing beside a younger man. Emily recognized him immediately. It was the man who had knocked on her door. Who is he? Michael looked at the picture. Richard's son. Emily frowned. My uncle. Michael nodded. Your father's younger brother. Emily had never heard about him. Why didn't I know I had an uncle? Because Daniel wanted you to forget that entire side of the family. Emily stared at the photograph. What does he want? Michael's expression became serious. The evidence your father collected. The evidence against Richard? Yes. Where is it? Michael looked at the letter Emily had found. Your father hid it somewhere only you could find. Emily looked confused. Why me? Because he knew one day you would find the letter. Emily suddenly remembered the old wooden box. The photograph. The hospital bracelet. The letter. Everything had been carefully placed there. But there was one thing she still didn't understand. Why did Dad wait until after his death to tell me? Michael looked away. He didn't. Emily froze. What? He didn't leave that letter after his death. What are you saying? Michael took out another document. Your father wrote that letter 3 years ago. Emily stared at him. But he knew I would hate him. He also knew you would eventually search for the truth. Then why did he pretend to be dead? Michael sighed. Because Richard was getting closer. Emily suddenly heard her phone vibrate. Unknown number. She answered. Hello. No one spoke. Then a familiar voice whispered. Emily? Her heart stopped. Dad? Silence. Then Daniel spoke again. My little girl. Emily covered her mouth. Tears immediately filled her eyes. Dad, is it really you? Yes. Where are you? I can't tell you. Why? Because they're listening. Emily looked around the room. Who? Her father's voice became weaker. Emily, listen carefully. Do not trust anyone. Dad, I need to see you. You will. When? Tomorrow. Emily's heart raced. Where? Before Daniel could answer, another voice suddenly came through the phone. A man. Cold, calm, and terrifyingly familiar. Hello, Emily. The call ended. Emily stared at her phone. Michael immediately stood up. What happened? Emily looked at him. My grandfather. Michael's face changed. Then every light in the house went out. A car stopped outside. Emily looked through the window. A black SUV. Michael whispered. They found us. Emily grabbed the letter. But before they could move, a piece of paper was pushed underneath the front door. Emily picked it up. There were only 4 words written on it. Ask your mother why. Emily slowly turned toward Sarah. Her mother was crying, because she knew exactly what those 4 words meant. And this time, there was no way left to hide the truth. Emily slowly turned toward her mother. Ask your mother why. Those 4 words were still on the piece of paper in her hand. Why? Emily asked. Sarah looked down. Why did Dad say I should ask you? Her mother remained silent. Mom, I'm done with the lies. Sarah finally looked up. I'm sorry. For what? For making you hate your father. Emily's eyes filled with tears. You made me believe he abandoned me. I know. You made me believe he didn't love me. I know. You let me spend 17 years hating the man who was actually trying to protect me. Sarah covered her face. I was afraid. Afraid of Richard? Sarah shook her head. No. Emily froze. Then who? Sarah slowly lowered her hands. Your father. Emily stared at her. What? After Daniel escaped, he came back to me. When? 3 years after he disappeared. Emily remembered the date on the document. 2011. Sarah nodded. He came to the house in the middle of the night. Just like you said. Yes. What happened? Sarah took a deep breath. He told me Richard was still searching for the evidence. He said he had enough proof to destroy Richard. Then why didn't he go to the police? Because the evidence also exposed someone else. Who? Sarah looked at Michael. Michael said nothing. Emily felt a terrible feeling in her stomach. Mom, who? Sarah finally whispered. Your father's business partner. Emily frowned. Who is that? Sarah looked directly at her. Michael. Emily turned toward him. Michael's face remained expressionless. Is that true? He didn't answer. Emily stepped backward. You worked with my father? Yes. And you knew where he was? Yes. Then why did you tell me he was safe? Michael sighed. Because I was trying to keep you alive. Emily shook her head. Everyone keeps saying that. She looked at her mother. Who can I trust? Sarah began crying. No one. Suddenly, a loud crash came from downstairs. Everyone froze. Michael reached for his phone. Stay here. Emily grabbed his arm. No. Another crash. Then footsteps. Someone was inside the house. Michael quietly moved toward the hallway. A shadow appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Emily held her breath. Then a man slowly walked into the light. It was Richard, her grandfather. He looked directly at Emily. You finally found the letter. Emily's voice shook. You're supposed to be dead. Richard smiled. That was the idea. Michael stepped forward. Richard, leave. Richard laughed. You still think you can protect her? Emily looked between them. What do you want? Richard stared at her. Your father's evidence. I don't have it. Richard smiled. Yes, you do. He pointed toward the wooden box. You've had it since the beginning. Emily looked at the box. The photograph. The hospital bracelet. The letter. The number 714. She suddenly understood. The clues weren't separate. They were instructions. She picked up the hospital bracelet. Room 714. Richard's smile disappeared. Emily looked at him. That's where the evidence is, isn't it? Richard said nothing. Michael suddenly whispered, Emily, run. But before she could move, Richard pulled out his phone. A video began playing. Emily saw her father. Daniel was sitting in a dark room. He looked older and exhausted. Then he looked directly into the camera. Emily. She began crying. I'm sorry. Daniel paused. If you're watching this, it means Richard found you. Emily held her breath. Her father continued. But there's something you need to know. The video suddenly stopped. Richard smiled. You want the rest? Emily stared at him. What happened to my father? Richard leaned closer. He trusted the wrong person. Then he looked at Michael and said, Ask him. Emily turned toward Michael. His face had gone completely pale, because now Emily knew. The person who betrayed her father might have been standing beside her the entire time. Emily slowly turned toward Michael. Ask him. Those words echoed in her mind. Michael stood completely still. Michael, Emily said, what did you do to my father? He looked at Sarah, then at Richard. Finally, he lowered his eyes. I betrayed him. Emily felt her heart sink. You? Michael nodded. I was the one who told Richard where Daniel was hiding. Sarah covered her mouth. I knew it, she whispered. Emily stared at Michael. You were my father's friend. I was. You helped him. I did. Then why? Michael's eyes filled with regret. Because Richard threatened my family. Emily shook her head. You could have gone to the police. I tried. What happened? They were already bought. Michael explained that Daniel had trusted him with the evidence. The evidence was hidden inside room 714. But Richard discovered their plan. He forced me to give him the location, Michael said. Did you? Yes. Emily's voice became cold. And my father? Michael looked down. I thought Richard would only take the evidence. But he took Dad. Yes. Emily stepped closer. You let him take my father. I thought Daniel would survive. Richard suddenly laughed. Enough. Emily turned toward him. You destroyed my family. Richard's expression remained cold. Your father destroyed himself. He loved me. Richard's face changed. He was weak. No, Emily said. He was brave. Richard stepped toward her. Give me the letter. Emily held it tightly. No. You don't understand what's in that letter. I know enough. Richard's eyes narrowed. The letter contains the location of the evidence. Emily looked at Michael. Where? Michael shook his head. I don't know. Richard smiled. I do. He pointed toward the hospital bracelet. 714 isn't just a room number. Emily looked at it. It's a code. Richard continued. Your father knew someone would eventually find the bracelet. He hid the evidence where no one would think to look. Where? Richard smiled. Under the hospital. Emily froze. Michael suddenly understood. The old underground archive. Richard nodded. That's where Daniel hid everything. Emily looked at her mother. Take me there. Sarah shook her head. No. Mom, I need to find Dad. You don't understand. What? Sarah began crying. Your father didn't hide the evidence there. Emily frowned. Then where? Sarah looked at Richard. Richard's expression suddenly changed. Sarah whispered. He hid himself. Emily's eyes widened. What? Daniel knew Richard would eventually find the evidence. So he destroyed it. Richard shouted. Liar. Sarah continued. He destroyed everything, except one copy. Emily's heart raced. Where's the copy? Sarah looked at her daughter. You. Emily froze. What? Your father gave it to you when you were 8. Emily tried to remember. The old house. The stairs. Her pink teddy bear. Her father's final goodbye. Then suddenly a memory came back. She remembered her father kneeling in front of her that night. He had handed her the teddy bear and whispered, Never let anyone take this from you. Emily's eyes widened. The teddy bear. She still had it. It had been stored in her childhood bedroom for 17 years. Emily looked at Michael. The evidence is inside the teddy bear. Richard immediately reached for her. But Michael stepped between them. Run. Emily grabbed her mother's hand. They rushed toward the back door. Behind them, Richard shouted, You can't escape the truth. Emily didn't stop. because for the first time in 17 years, she knew exactly where to look. And somewhere inside that old pink teddy bear was the truth her father had risked everything to protect. Emily drove through the night with her mother beside her. Neither of them spoke. The old pink teddy bear was sitting on the passenger seat. For 17 years, Emily had kept it because it was the only thing she had left from her father. Now she wondered if it had been hiding a secret all along. When they reached her childhood home, Emily ran inside. She rushed upstairs and opened the closet. There it was, the little pink teddy bear. Its fur was faded. When I was missing. But Emily remembered it perfectly. She picked it up and noticed something strange. There was a small zipper underneath its back. Her hands began shaking. She opened it. Inside was a tiny memory card wrapped in plastic. Emily stared at it. "Dad." Her mother began crying. Emily inserted the card into her laptop. A video appeared. Daniel was sitting in a small room. He looked tired, but his eyes were calm. "Emily," he said, "if you're watching this, then you finally found the truth." Emily started crying. "I'm sorry I left you. I know you thought I abandoned you. But every day I stayed away was a day I knew you were safe." Daniel explained everything. Richard had been involved in a massive financial crime. Daniel had discovered the evidence and planned to expose him. But Richard threatened Emily. So Daniel made the hardest decision of his life. He disappeared. He allowed his daughter to hate him because hatred was safer than the truth. Then Daniel looked directly into the camera. "There is one thing I need you to understand." He paused. "I never stopped loving you." Emily covered her mouth. "I watched your first school play from outside. I saw you graduate. I was there on every birthday. I just couldn't let you see me." The video continued. "Your mother wasn't the enemy either." Emily looked at Sarah. "She was protecting you the only way she knew how." Then Daniel revealed the final secret. "The man who betrayed me wasn't Michael." Emily froze. "What?" Daniel continued. "Michael was forced to betray me. The real person who gave Richard everything." He paused. "It was someone inside our family." Emily looked at Sarah. Her mother shook her head. "No." Daniel said the name. "Your grandfather's lawyer." Emily suddenly understood why Richard had always been one step ahead. The lawyer had controlled the documents, the police reports, and the financial records. Daniel had hidden the final evidence inside Emily's teddy bear because he knew no one would ever search there. Then the video ended. Emily sat silently. Her entire childhood had been built around a lie. But now she finally understood her father. She picked up the phone and called Michael. "We have the evidence." Michael answered immediately. "Then we can finally expose Richard." Weeks later, the evidence reached federal investigators. Richard was arrested. His financial empire collapsed. The truth about Daniel was finally revealed. But Emily still had one question. "Where is my father?" Michael looked at her. "He's waiting for you." Emily's heart stopped. "Where?" Michael gave her an address. She drove there alone. At the end of a quiet road stood a small house. Emily walked toward the front door. Her hand trembled as she knocked. Once. Twice. The door opened. An older man stood there. Gray hair. Tired eyes. But the same smile she remembered from childhood. Emily couldn't speak. Neither could he. Then Daniel whispered, "Emily?" She ran into his arms. For the first time in 17 years, she hugged her father. "I thought you abandoned me," she cried. Daniel held her tightly. "I would never abandon you. I hated you." "I know. I'm sorry." Daniel kissed her forehead. "You were never supposed to apologize." They stood there for a long time. No more secrets. No more lies. No more hiding. Emily finally understood something her father had known all along. Sometimes love doesn't look like staying. Sometimes love means walking away. Even when every part of your heart is begging you to stay. And that night, Emily finally forgave the father she had spent 17 years hating. Because she finally knew the truth. He hadn't abandoned her. He had been protecting her all along.